Today, we're taking a look at a tragedy that unfolded in the clear blue skies over Southern California, the story of Hughes Airwest Flight 706.
It is a truly chilling question, isn't it? You've got a civilian jet filled with passengers on a totally routine trip. And then you've got a military fighter jet just riddled with hidden failures. This disaster, well, it wasn't just a mistake. It was a catastrophic system failure that was just waiting to happen. So let's dive into this.
So, the scene is June 6, 1971. It's a clear, calm day over the LA basin. You know, the kind of day pilots absolutely love. But high above the suburbs, two very different aircraft were moving steadily, directly towards each other, completely and utterly unaware of the other's existence.
First up, we have Hughes Airwest Flight 706. This was a nearly brand new McDonnell Douglas DC-9, pretty much the pinnacle of the modern jet age at the time. On board, you had 44 passengers and a crew of 5, just climbing steadily out of Los Angeles. It was the first leg of a simple, multi-stop flight up to Seattle. Everything was perfectly normal.
And then there was the other aircraft, a U.S. Marine Corps F-4 Phantom. This thing was a twin-engine monster, a fighter jet built for pure speed and combat. But this particular Phantom, well, it was not in good shape. It was being ferried back to its home base for some much-needed maintenance, and as we're about to see, it was plagued by a whole cascade of critical system failures.
To really get our heads around how this could happen on a perfectly clear day, we have to understand what the aviation world was like back in 1971. It was a system that had some serious vulnerabilities that, when they all lined up just right, created the perfect storm for disaster.
Okay, so the bedrock of collision avoidance back then was a principle called see and avoid. It sounds simple enough, right? Just look out the window. But think about it for a second. Would you really trust pilots to rely only on their eyes when their jets are closing in on each other at hundreds of miles per hour? This one principle put the entire responsibility for not hitting each other squarely on the vision of the flight crews.
And this really gets to the heart of the problem here, the huge difference in how these two planes were operating. The DC-9, the airliner, was flying IFR, Instrument Flight Rules, meaning it was under the direct guidance and protection of air traffic control. The F-4 Phantom, on the other hand, was flying VFR, Visual Flight Rules, so it was basically on its own, relying solely on that see and avoid idea. They were in the exact same sky, but they were playing by two totally different sets of rules.
Now, this is where the story takes a really critical turn. The Phantom wasn't just any plane flying VFR, it was a compromised one. Its onboard radar wasn't working right, its oxygen system was leaking, which limited its altitude, and its radio had only just been fixed after failing. But the most dangerous failure of all was the transponder. So here's the crucial piece of the puzzle. A transponder is what makes an aircraft truly visible to air traffic controllers. It sends out a unique code and its altitude, turning a simple anonymous blip on a radar screen into a clearly identified aircraft. And the Phantom's transponder? It was broken.
For the controllers who were guiding that DC-9, this meant the F-4 Phantom was effectively invisible. Seriously, imagine driving on a busy highway at night with no headlights. That's pretty much what this was like in the sky. The fighter jet was a ghost, just a flicker of background noise on their screen, with absolutely no information to suggest it was a high-speed jet on a direct collision course with a passenger plane.
So with the Phantom totally invisible to air traffic control and the DC-9 crew completely unaware of any threat, the final minutes began to tick down over the San Gabriel Mountains.
The DC-9 crew did exactly what they were told, turning right directly into the path of the Phantom. At the same time, the Phantom's crew, dealing with some haze, had climbed up to 15,500 feet, putting them right in a high-traffic departure corridor. Now, because of their angles, neither aircraft would have appeared to move much in the other's windscreen, making them almost impossible to spot. Which makes you ask, could either crew have realistically avoided this? In the very last seconds, the Phantom's radar intercept officer happened to look up, saw the airliner, and screamed a warning. The pilot yanked the jet into a desperate evasive roll, but there was just no time.
At 6:11 p.m. and 20 seconds, the two aircraft collided. The Phantom's wing and tail sliced right through the DC-9's cockpit and the front of the fuselage. For the pilots and the passengers of Flight 706, there was no warning at all. The impact was catastrophic and completely instantaneous. The tragedy claimed 50 lives, all 49 people aboard the Hughes Airwest DC-9 and the pilot of the F-4 Phantom.
And in one last tragic system failure, the Phantom's pilot couldn't even escape. There was a known design flaw in the ejection seat sequence
That meant when his radar intercept officer ejected first, it actually prevented the pilot's own canopy from blowing off, trapping him in the doomed aircraft. The RIO, he was the only survivor of the entire disaster.
In the aftermath, as wreckage was scattered across the mountains, investigators faced a pretty daunting task, figuring out how this could possibly have happened. Was it the pilots? Was it air traffic control? The military? Well, the answer they found was way more complicated, and it didn't point to a single person, but to the system itself.
The NTSB investigation concluded that this wasn't one mistake, it was a whole chain of vulnerabilities. The rules actually allowed a high-speed military jet with broken equipment to just cruise through a busy civilian departure corridor on its own. The see and avoid principle was simply not good enough for jet speeds. At the end of the day, the system had failed every single person involved.
You know, the legacy of this disaster is literally written in the safety rules that protect us today. Controlled airspace was expanded to protect airliners from takeoff all the way to landing. Transponders became mandatory in these busy areas, making sure there were no more ghosts in the system. And new procedures were put in place to better coordinate civilian and military flights. And this is really the crucial takeaway. When you get on a plane today, you are protected by a whole web of safety systems, and many of them were created directly in response to the painful lessons learned from Flight 706. It was a disaster that literally forced aviation to evolve.
This incident serves as such a stark reminder that safety isn't some destination you arrive at. It's a constant, ongoing process of learning and improving. And it forces all of us to ask a really difficult question. How do we identify the hidden flaws in our systems before they lead to tragedy?